Hey, welcome to the We're Better Together podcast. I'm Ian Stevenson.
And I'm Daniel Arduña. We come from different backgrounds, but we're working together. So our goal is to help you navigate being better together in the various sectors of your life by bringing you a once-a-month interview and some stimulating thoughts on the weeks in between.
We hope this podcast keeps you tracking on building something better together, whether it's your marriage, your family, your workplace. We want to serve you. So here's today's episode.
Welcome to another 10-minute tune-up on this Monday. We are really excited to share with you, and we wanted to continue a conversation around conflict. So we left off last week really looking at this idea of conflict and ending with this point that conflict's actually good and can be healthy when done right. And the reminder that to engage within it, if we can hold ourselves to this sense that we're doing something that is for the betterment of the group, for the bigger picture of what it is that we're chasing after, that can be a healthy way to engage within conflict. We wanted to take some more steps forward now in discussing some other tools that we could utilize when we are engaging within conflict. Ian, as that comes to mind, whether you want to start with a story of an example from maybe where you've seen some of this happen, or if there are some tips that come to mind for you of some of the next steps of engagement within conflict, what do you have to say within that?
It's kind of funny, because when we were recording our deal last week on conflict, I'm here in my office and a couple of my employees could hear our conversation. And it's kind of funny because they were having some conflict. And I actually ended up, talking with each of them ahead of time and getting to coach them on a couple things. And they were able to go into that conflict and they had a great result. And so it's such a testimony to the fact that it really does make us better together. When you can go through conflict well, it does make you better together. So I want to just share a couple things that I actually shared with them. Is that cool?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things was, and I think the principle here is that when you go into conflict, you have to remember it's not about you. It's not personal. It's about something bigger than you. And the reason you want to go through it is so that you can accomplish that bigger thing better together. So that's why you're engaging in the conflict. So many times when we go into conflict, we think it's about us. And it's really about trying to be better to accomplish our mission. So you got to keep that in mind. And one thing, now, depending on it, we have a lot of different listeners coming from different places spiritually. But, if you have any form of relationship with God, like one thing that helps you do that is starting the conflict conversation with prayer, because it reminds you that it's really bigger than you, and that you need God's help to get through it and have the right perspective. So if that's a possibility at all, I always encourage start with prayer. Start with prayer before you even get into the conversation. Have you had some experience with that, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, for me, walking in a faith journey and the beliefs that I have, I think prayer has been a massive piece when it comes to conflict. Whether that's in my marriage, whether that happens within the church that I work in and pastor in. That's been a massive place. And I would even say to some of our listeners, if you don't share that same faith background that maybe Ian and I have, maybe a tip or a tool that I would give to you is to try to engage conflict when you've had a moment to take a breath, and not when you are extremely heated and then running straight into it. But even if you can pause yourself to calm down, to relax, to breathe, if prayer is not something that you engage in, I think that as well can be another way to kind of try to set yourself up for better success when you're going to go and engage some conversation around conflict.
Yeah, and I think one other principle that just follows up on that in terms of it being about the end result is being able to clearly articulate at the very beginning why you want to have the conversation is because you want to accomplish what you're in this together to do. You can clearly state that and let them know your heart in having the conversation is about that. And then another just real quick principle is, I believe, humility. And that begins with like knowing what your part in it is. Because any conflict, whether you realize it or not, like you've contributed to it in some way or another. So the more you can think about that ahead of time, kind of have some idea of maybe the part you may have contributed going into it, and say, and lead with that. So don't lead with what you think is so bad about what the other person did. Like lead with your part in it. And that helps you get to a safer place with the other person. And that humility is just really key to helping resolve it, rather than powering up, coming in strong and coming in hot, like you were talking about, you know?
Yeah, Ian, as you share that, it's another word within that too is taking ownership is what I think. Taking ownership for the part that you played in what you just shared. That's massive.
Mm-hmm.
Because that could even be, I think, of times in my life where I didn't communicate something well, and then something happened and I'm getting frustrated, or I didn't communicate at all.
Yeah.
About some kind of expectation or something, and then something happens and I get extremely frustrated about it. And in the times where I'm able to pause and reflect and think about before engaging within it, sometimes I'm able to actually identify, you know what? I didn't communicate, or I did not do a good job of communicating some expectations around here. And so even though there may have been something that was still broken or hurt, I had a huge part to play within that. And that's gonna make a massive difference in the conversation that I may have with an individual or a team that I work with, when I can identify that piece of the part that I played.
That's a great example, man. How many conflicts start because of unspoken expectations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that leads something you mentioned in our pre-recording conversation, Daniel, about asking questions, right? So
yes.
That's another way to even be humble in it, rather than coming in with knowing it all and making sure you're the one that's going to solve this. Like, you come in with humility and asking questions, then that shows, it's a safer place, right?
Yeah, I think to follow up those asking questions, do active listening. So as you ask that question, then actually pay attention, listen in, and let people or your team or individuals respond to those questions, and really soak in and take what they're saying and reflect on that in those moments as well. They may be opening up doors in their responses that are going to help you to be able to navigate that conflict better.
Absolutely. Listening is an act of humility, right?
Yes.
So many times we think we have to do all the talking. I know I get reminded of that quite often. So, oh man, that's so good. Anything else, Daniel, you want to say? We're coming to our 8-minute mark here. So we want to give our listeners some real actionable stuff they can take out of here.
I think that I would just leave it with this short time of taking those steps that were said, maybe to just phrase it up again. Careful with the statements that you use when you're coming in about attacking people. Not just accusing on your part, but take your own part. What's the part that you played? Asking really good questions, and then doing active listening within that. And then just a reminder again, before you even walk into any of those steps, if you're a person who prays, take that opportunity to pray and center yourself in that way. If you're someone that doesn't do so, though, take the moment to breathe, pause, let some of that initial anger or frustration, heightened reaction go before you step into the conversation.
So as we wrap it up, we just want to encourage all of you, our listeners, like this week, don't be afraid of conflict. Think about where there's maybe some conflict and how you can use it to make things better together, whether it's your marriage, your family, your workplace, and embrace it. Like, take on the challenge, enter into it humbly, and invite others to help make things better together. We hope that this has served you and prompted you, stimulated you to take some step this week that will make your scenario better together. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate you guys. If this has helped you, maybe share it with someone else and it'll help them as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. If there's anything you heard today that was helpful to you, that you think might be helpful to somebody else,
Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can help others be better together as well.